Look, up in the sky! It's a bird! It's a plane! No, it's 20 tons of falling debris! Look out! Now, I'm unapologetically a fan of the Christopher Reeve films. They made me love the character and genre from an early age. Most of Man of Steel's defenders try to use Reeve nostalgia as the basis for rejecting criticisms of this film. Frankly, Donner and Reeve got everything right about the character, so resorting to that kind of defense does them no favors. But I'm going to try and refrain from making too many comparisons between the two films as to judge Man of Steel on its own merits, and not for failing to live up to the enormous shadow cast by Donner's Superman. To start off, in a nutshell, I had much the same problem with this film as I have with The Amazing Spider-Man. The tone is much too somber for a Superman film. This, of course, is the trend that began after Nolan's Batman took off and was successful, where for like 5 years or something, everyone apart from Marvel Studios was doing the grim and gritty superhero film. This could be called the Nolanizing of Superman. Now, The Amazing Spider-Man was the remake nobody wanted, coming off a series that wasn't even 5 years past. At least in the case of Superman, I can't begrudge them rebooting a series that ended 20-odd years ago. Superman Returns had a great chance to continue the legacy that began with the Reeves series, but that's a subject for another time. Now, the first 20 minutes of this film alone is enough to start making me nauseous. We start on Krypton, which admittedly looks really good, but everything about it feels extremely rushed. I didn't really care for the very strange Kal-El is the first natural-born person on Krypton in centuries plot. I'm guessing that's something from John Byrne's reboot that was fairly popular in the 80s, but I never really cared for it there, and I like it even less here. The Codex subplot is a pretty useless MacGuffin. They just added the unnecessary layer of Kryptonians can't choose their own fate. Because I suppose revenge and conquest isn't sophisticated enough for 21st century audiences in terms of villain motivations. Russell Crowe ably steps into Marlon Brando's place as Superman's Kryptonian father Jor-El with all the gravitas due the character. Jor-El's death at Zod's hands moments before Kal-El's departure has absolutely no resonance or bearing on the rest of the film and seemed a blatant attempt just to be different. Thankfully, it doesn't serve as the impetus for Supes to defeat Zod, i.e. another debacle the size of Joker killing Batman's parents, but that made it all the more glaringly unnecessary. Again, as if this glorious prologue wasn't defiled enough, we have the Kryptonian Council passing sentence, without Jor-El, on Zod and his renegades, while the planet is in the midst of blowing up. We know we all have moments to live, but justice demands we deliver these criminals to the relative safety of the Phantom Zone before our inevitable destruction. What? It's like they made sure they hit all the origin points as quickly as they could so they could just move on past to the next segment. Then you have the actual destruction of Krypton faced by Lara alone, which robs the film of the iconic moment of both of Kal-El's parents sending him off to a better future while facing their destruction together. And that's what, the first 20 minutes? I better get the Maylocks out. Next we have the flashbacks of young Clark. Since they really couldn't be bothered to show the Kents discovering Kal-El in their haste to get to the destructive mayhem that would supposedly make up for the rote Superman Returns, the flashback scenes felt way too heavy-handed. I mean, I admit, I'll cry at a cat food commercial. I'm a softie. But all the "world's too big for me" writing felt so over the top, it just took me out of the movie. I also found the kid playing teenage Clark fairly annoying. One of the major problems people tend to have with this film is Pa Kent's controversial line that Clark should let people die in the cause of hiding his powers, quote-unquote, maybe. Now, I see what they were trying to do with Pa in Man of Steel, and to be honest, I can appreciate it. This is his son, the love of his life, and there must be an overwhelming fear that his strange abilities could be exploited by unsavory individuals. Even in Donner's Superman, they made clear that the Kents taught Clark to hide his powers for fear people would come and take you away. So there's nothing inherently wrong with showing an overly protective Ma and Pa Kent. But they went about it all wrong. Instead of showing a situation where Clark was using his powers selfishly, to score touchdowns would be the Donner equivalent, and having Pa reprimand him, he gets a scolding for saving several lives? It just doesn't work. It doesn't at all jibe with Superman's traditional upbringing, where he learns the value of human life by his parents. In this film, he learns this in spite of his parents, which is a real disservice to the characters of Jonathan and Martha Kent. I thought Kevin Costner was an extremely good choice to play Pa Kent, and limiting him to flashbacks was very effective. I was a bit disappointed that both he and Diane Lane were a bit too young for the roles, though, particularly in having to resort to caking up Lane in some poor age makeup to try and age her for the film's second half. I have to admit, I'm pretty sick of there having to be an argument between the hero and his father/father figure just before he dies. They did it in Spider-Man, they did it in The Amazing Spider-Man. Nah, you're not my real dad, I don't have to listen to you. It's designed just to make the hero feel like a jerk for acting like such a jerk to their father figure that was doomed to die. Can't the death be just as impactful if the two are just getting along? I'm honestly surprised Batman Begins didn't have 8-year-old Bruce arguing with his parents before the fateful gunshots. I just got over a trauma with bats and you idiots are taking me to a gothic opera? What was the Care Bears movie sold out? The Clark wandering scene seemed kinda aimless. Was he looking for answers or just trying to get himself lost? We're never told. They also missed out on giving him the Fortress of Solitude, opting instead on giving him a dilapidated spaceship. I thought overall Henry Cavill carried it off extremely well. We really didn't get to see his Clark cover, so it's tough to give him an overall grade, but I thought he did a pretty good job given how little he had to work with. We got glimpses of the aw shucks farm boy persona here and there. Part of the film's problem is there was no humor. At all. The closest being the bar scene where Cal smashes the guy's rig. For me, it was the most cringe-worthy scene these eyes have seen in many a year. And there was no joy in the film. Superman putting on the suit for the first time should have been a triumph. It's sad when Reeves' first 10-second flight elicited greater joy than in the entirety of Cavill's 3 minutes. There's very little sense of exhilaration that should come with being Superman. Superman is primarily a wish-fulfillment character, but this film goes out of its way to convince you that being Superman is kind of a drag. I think it's basically the powers that be that want to appeal to the middle-aged guys with the money who are afraid of being called a pansy for liking a Superman that smiles, gets cats out of trees, and pats the kids on the head. No, their Superman was meant to be mopey and angsty and feared instead of looked up to. The problem is, then, in them wanting to bring Superman down to our level. But that's not the character's purpose. It's like the way filmmakers these days are trying to constantly downplay Christ's divinity in films. They claim we can't relate to a Superman that isn't chronically depressed and miserable. But the point is, I'm not supposed to be able to relate to Superman having superhuman powers any more than I'm supposed to relate to Jesus being the Son of God. They are the examples I aspire to emulate. And it's not like Hollywood can't do this properly. Captain America is a prime example of how Marvel treated the concept with respect and didn't betray the character's core principles. Cap is a Boy Scout and gets his share of sounding square and getting ribbed by his teammates from time to time, and it seems like that's something that terrifies DC when it pertains to Superman. Superman's steadfast optimism is not something to shy away from, but something to embrace and celebrate. Of course, there was plenty of religious allegory to go around. My favorite was probably Clark talking to the priest with the image of Christ at Gethsemane in the background. Some people tend to scoff at the religious allegory used in the film, but to give credit where due, I think it was used to great effect here, particularly when compared with Superman Returns. I really thought Amy Adams was great as Lois. I honestly can't think of better casting these days than Amy Adams when it comes to the spunky, adventurous, warm-hearted character of Lois Lane. They didn't really give her too much to work with in the way of characterization, but we get to see her a bit at the beginning as a hard-hitting journalist with a bit of an edge. I thought Cavill and Adams genuinely had great chemistry. The biggest problem for me is the lack of the two-person triangle. Traditionally, Lois falls in love with Superman, yet Superman pursues Lois in his everyman guise of Clark Kent, preferring to win her as the regular guy. Lois doesn't even really give Clark a second thought, however, regardless of working with him every day. That's a real interesting and unique trait in the love life of Superman. While it's true they've tried to do this in films both in Spider-Man and Batman, the hero competing with his secret identity, the concept really only belongs to Superman, and to my disappointment they've completely bypassed it here, letting Lois in on his secret long before Clark even becomes the Superman we all know and love. I feel Michael Shannon was a game General Zod. I really liked him, and I really wanted him to have a kneel before Zod scene. The most they gave him is the whole "I will find him" scene. He never really gets another chance to chew the scenery, even at the end battle. But they never really let him off the chain, which is disappointing since he had so much potential. The battle scenes are nothing special. I remember seeing the Smallville fight twice and thinking I missed something since it just kinda ends. It's just action for the sake of it with no real context. Nothing gained or lost. I admit I was missing some scenes of Supes actually saving people amid all the destruction. Superman Returns was all saving, no fighting. Man of Steel was the reverse, perhaps by design. I feel the military had too much presence in this film to the point of being intrusive. It's like an alien invasion movie that happens to star Superman. And it's unforgivable that they actually dub him Superman in a throwaway line as if they were ashamed they had to assign the name to him in the first place. The character of Jenny didn't have much to do and could very easily have been a role given to Jimmy Olsen, who has been omitted purely for the sake of the political correctness in adding another female character to the movie. Now let's get to the controversial ending, Supes killing Zod. It's interesting that Nolan's 3 Batman films pay such lip service to the hero not killing, and he almost inevitably does in every movie, while here it's taken for granted that Supes won't kill, but ends up doing so anyway. My problem with the concept is that it seemed like there was a few different ways Supes could have resolved the situation without killing Zod. Fly him away from the family he was trying to kill. Slam his face into the ground. Cover his eyes, maybe. It seemed much too contrived for my taste, as if it were simply written for shock value. The Zod killing felt like a rushed addition without the proper build-up or execution, pardon the pun. Apparently it was, since it was reportedly Snyder and Goyer who dreamed it up at the 11th hour and convinced Nolan that it made for a better climax. Superman vs. the Elite was basically a whole movie exploring Supes and his stance on killing, and I'd recommend that film to you as a proper depiction of Superman. When you think of it, for years George Reeves was the gold standard for Superman. Then came Christopher Reeve, and he redefined the character for a new day. It could be done again, and I'd like nothing more than to see it done again, but I don't see Superman reinvented for the better by Man of Steel. I like the cast, and I think with a better story, Henry Cavill and Amy Adams would shine. I'm hoping that with the origin out of the way, we can get Superman back on track in Batman vs. Superman. Here's hoping. I'm giving Man of Steel 2.5 stars out of 5. This is Johnnie Torch reminding you yet again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again very soon.